Hey, everybody. It's the ZLORD podcast again. And there's Carter. And
Tezza likes a shaker.
Yeah, Tezza likes the shaker. Yes, when we don't have our drum. And we are away from our regular hacienda, beautiful home. And we have been now up in Maine for a couple months.
Yeah.
How's it feel, Carter?
Good.
You're a maniac. You were
Starting to
born
cool
here.
down.
This is your land of your birth. You do
Found out that the river might have PFAS in it, which is some sort of a forever chemical.
Oh, God.
We've been swimming in it 4 or 5 days a week.
Well, we have to be aware that it's a toxic world all around us. Better to know than not know. Better to find out as early as we can rather than wake up one day and be riddled with cancers, right?
There's a lot of chemicals around. Evidently, it's an ongoing something that we're all learning about. And actually, it was very interesting that RFK mentioned it in his speech of getting out of the race. Was that the biggest issue to him in his life, and what he was most interested in was the chemicals that are in the food and the processed food that the kids are being fed, and the fact that they're just not healthy. And he's had a bunch of statistics. I didn't know any of this, really. I mean, I knew people were obese a little bit in this, not a little bit, but a lot in this country. But essentially, he was saying it's not just a problem; it's a kid's problem, because the kids are having a lot of symptoms that they never had before, and which a lot of it, which is just unhealthiness and fatigue and getting
and heart
sick.
attacks and cancers.
All kind of
all
weird
sorts of
stuff.
terrible
And
things.
He's putting it onto the chemicals and the fact that it wouldn't take much to tweak it, and he was putting it on actually the free lunch thing, which everybody thinks, including me, is a good thing, especially for the kids that don't have as much access to good food. But the issue is that they're feeding them stuff that's real processed, and it's making them not healthy. And he said that the turnaround into turning that into organic vegetables and decent food is not only not going to change the money it costs, but the benefit would change an entire generation in our country. So there's all kind of stuff going on that we're not aware of. And the best thing about there was a lot of good things about his speech. It was very interesting. If nobody's listened to it, I highly encourage you to listen to it. It's only about a half hour. He's
43 minutes.
He's extremely intelligent. He's a huge breath of fresh air.
Okay, but we're not getting into politics.
No, we're not getting into politics.
We're not getting into politics.
No, we're not.
The thing is,
wait.
It's better to be aware than not aware. But I really don't want to get into politics.
We're not getting into politics. We're getting into our subject for today, which is that one of the great things about this discussion about the kids is that everyone in the country wants the kids to be healthy. Everyone. So it's not a political issue, and it is an issue that the entire country could rally around. That's what he was trying to push in his campaign. Wasn't successful because there wasn't much media coverage. But at any rate, I think that's a great idea, that he's looking for something that everybody can get behind. And that's what the subject of discussion was today. How do you open your mind and listen to what the other guy has to say and put that thinking actually in front of your own stuff? Because I do it all the time. We all catch ourselves listening to somebody, and instead of really listening to what they have to say, we're thinking about what we're going to say the minute he takes a breath and then stops,
right,
so we can jump in there and say what we have to say. I do it myself all the time. And
listening is an art. I think it's an art form. I had to learn it myself as a young woman. I was a lousy listener, and as a 36-year-old person going into recovery, I finally learned to listen in the rooms of recovery, because that's one of the most important things there are about changing from destructive habits to positive habits, is to listen to other people. Because when we get locked in our own thinking, that can often be what they call stinking thinking.
It's also
know?
a small place to be because we already know it all already, and there's no chance to learn much. All we're doing is regurgitating.
It's much better to listen to other people, to what they have to say, mainly about the golden rule, to treat other people the way that we would like to be treated. So why should we inflict upon other people that they must think the way we do? That's not abiding by the golden rule, is it?
It's not abiding by the golden rule. It's also a narrow, small place to live. It's everybody's got their experience, and everybody is big and large and bigger than they know and bigger than we know, and we're bigger than we know. And the world is huge. There's a lot going on in everybody's mind and everybody's experience. Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting exercise in presence and being on the now to listen to what somebody else has to say. And the benefit is that it gives them a feeling of respect so that they will then be more open to have an honest conversation, and then we can learn something.
I remember early on in my quest for understanding what's going on here in life as an adult, a friend of mine who had gotten into meditation earlier than I did, she was explaining to me that you can't explain it, that you have to experience it, what the state of meditation is about. And that thought is with me constantly, not just about the spiritual life, but in any subject matter, like whether we're talking about nutrition or whether we're talking about political proclivities or somebody's faith base. I mean, like, my idea about life changes, not on an hourly basis, but I would say, pretty much on a daily basis. I'm always looking at it from a different angle. And the only sure thing I know is what I experience. And for instance, like when I meditate, I go into this really comfortable, quiet oneness consciousness. I know that that's my go-to safe place. And I go there often when I get confused or overwhelmed. But as far as all the many, many choices and differences that we have in our waking life, I mean, there are so many variables. It changes.
There's a lot of variables.
Just like the way the wind does, like the way
That's right.
the weather does. So we're coming up to a time when all of us in America are going to vote. And I urge everyone, whether you believe in the system or not, to please vote. Please, your vote counts. And so, for some of us, it's going to be, I can honestly say it won't be until the very day of, the polls, or when we go to cast our vote, that I will know which way I'm going, because I vary.
You're gonna let it be on the whims of whatever you feel that day?
No, not the whim, but I'm an analytical, kind of logical, emotional, spiritual being. I have many different aspects, and I listen to everybody, and I listen to every candidate, and I listen to different spiritual teachers. And the one thing I find about, like, in my world, which is like the oneness world, I'm really into like the unity consciousness. Like, a really good teacher will basically say the same thing as every other good teacher. They just use different words. They're not bringing out any drastically new concept. It's been, the truth is the truth since the beginning of mankind. But things like economics and, even nutrition and toxicities of the world, those are variables. Those are like almost like chemical formulas, that can be randomly interchanged. So there's a huge, vast difference between choosing who you're going to vote for as a political candidate and how I'm going to relate to the world as a spiritual being having a human experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I find politics to be very difficult. I don't understand a lot of it. I try my best, and you and I discuss a lot, and our friends discuss a lot. And I do think that people are able to discuss more these days about our differences than we could, say, 5 or 6, 7 years ago when people were volatile. And something has changed. I think people are more open about talking in civilized ways. Do you think so, Carter?
Yeah, I agree.
What do you
I
think
agree.
that
We're
difference
evolving.
is?
Well, I have experienced, and I think, and I know in my guts that huge percentages of people realize the futility in the finger pointing and the arguing and the name calling,
Right.
and there didn't used to be. A few years ago, everybody was just pissed off, but now, and I think it's a function of the internet. It came upon us. Nobody was really paying much attention to it, and it just came out of nowhere. And all of a sudden, we had this fantastic thing, but how it manifested itself
20
was,
years ago.
yeah, but that's not long in the scheme of things, in
No,
the scheme
it's
of
not.
the political things, because we definitely had a change in our politic, and it got way nastier. And one of the reasons was because everybody suddenly had a voice.
Everybody
and so
had
the
a strong
angry
opinion,
people
too.
could get on there and say nasty stuff, and it would
Right.
be right out there in front of everybody. So there was a lot of venting going on for about 15 years.
I agree.
And that was the end of the 1960s kind of kids our age, our group, the baby boomers, people our age, because I was 20 in the 60s, and that whole anti-establishment and the two sides and all that stuff with that kind of the right and the left that evolved up until, say, the 90s, kind of grew and became a little bit mature. And then when the internet came, wham, everybody could say anything, and the younger generation got in on it, and everybody was pissed off, and so everybody started screaming at each other and pointing. And so now, 20, 30 years later,
we're tired of
well,
screaming
everybody,
and pointing. Yeah.
well, a huge groups of people realize that it's just not a good way to get anything done. I mean, we've just been stagnant. Well, we haven't really been stagnant. There's been a huge takeover, but we're not going to talk about that stuff. But it's just kind of evolved because people didn't have a very good feel of things, and we're all growing and evolving all the time. However, to bring it back to what you were saying, the thing that really is a big key in all of this for the future, for all of us, is to kindly listen, not cancel anybody, let everybody say what they have, the freedom of speech. That's what this country is most great about. Of all the things we have, there's problems, but the best thing is we're free here, and we haven't been free in the last 15 years. And so people
What do you mean we haven't been free from
Well, there's been a lot of cancel culture, canceling, and people demanding and trying to shove their ideology down everybody's throat and shouting them down. And I think we all realize that, especially in light of all this latest university stuff with the Ivy people and the firing of the college people and trying
college presidents.
trying to regroup this and try to figure out how to make it so the university is a place to have a free exchange of ideas, not to go to some place that's already made up their political mind, and you got to toe the line to go there. That's how it kind of evolved, but it didn't evolve, I don't think, in any other way than just trying to do the right thing. I think it just kind of went off sideways, and so now hopefully we're bringing that back, and the way to bring it back is to listen to the other guy.
But also to listen to our own self, to listen to our heart, to listen to our reactions, our feelings when we hear other people sharing, not to immediately take offense if they're saying something we don't like, but really to listen with our heart rather than just our logical mind. I mean, and what I'm trying to say is, like, if we have a connection inside of our own self, inside of our heart, with our higher being, with our higher nature as a human, then we will give respect and space to other people who have differences of opinion. I think it's only when we feel insecure about our own connection with what we feel is, healthy or uplifting or whatever. I don't want to use the word right or wrong, there's that connection that, like I'm talking about, like the way I feel about spirit. I feel absolutely sure of my connection with spirit. But when I think about my connection with the outside world, whether it's politics or gender issues or, nutrition issues or which country is better to visit or not. Like, I am very flexible. I'm like a river, hitting different rocks. I go this way and that way.
So my immediate thought is the reason that you're very secure with your spirit is because you've been doing it a long time.
I'm committed.
You're committed, but you've also got a lot of experience. There's a lot of water gone under the bridge in your spiritual life. And what happens with that is just like with me, that I think I understand. I'm more clear about stuff now that I'm 78. A lot of guys my
finally, huh? Just
now,
before you
a lot of people my age I notice are pretty secure about what they think. And a lot of that is a lot of time has gone by. We've tried a lot of stuff and we've had experience. But in my case, I've prayed I realized I didn't have much wisdom when I was in my 30s. And so as soon as I got involved in my spirit, I started praying for wisdom. So
that's when they started calling you a wise guy.
That's when they started calling me a wise. Some guy said they did. They had that. They called for the prayer report in the church one day. They said, "Has anybody had any answer with prayer?" And I said, "Well, I think I've had one, preacher." And they said, "Well, what happened to you?" And the girls started crying up in the front row. Said, "Oh God, it was a wonderful God has intervened in Carter's life. Isn't it beautiful?" So what happened?
Come to the light.
I said, "I was downtown. I've been praying for wisdom, and I was downtown, and 3 people called me a wise guy."
Right. That's a good one.
And
you are, Carter. You're a wise guy.
They stopped the
prayer
meeting.
But getting back to what we were talking about.
They stopped the prayer report after that.
What we concentrate on is what we are. And if we concentrate on the political world, well, we will become a political animal. And if we concentrate upon the spiritual world, we will be more comfortable with our spiritual nature. And culinary skills, for instance, if we really practice making a meal from scratch, we get really good at it. It becomes creative and fun. So whatever we think about is what we become, and we are.
Well, that's true. And I think it's we have an obligation. The politic is tricky, and it's low-level stuff for sure. And there's a lot of fakery and lying going on all sides, and has been since the beginning of the time. It's kind of the nature of...
It's a necessary evil.
Of politics.
It's a necessary part of society.
Well, it's like my friend Michael Garcia was working for Senator Smathers. I think I told this story once on another podcast, but...
A million years ago.
But he was working in the 70s for Senator Smathers, who was a great guy from Florida. And Mike's anyway, he was working for him and he was leaving after about a year and a half, and he said, "Senator, I got to ask you," because he was bewildered. Mike was only 23 or something, or 22 or 3. He says, "Is there anything here in Washington that is true and right and honest? Is there anything?" And Senator Smathers said, he answered immediately. He said, "Yes, there's one thing. There's one thing that's always true. It always happens. You can always count on it. And it's always the same." And Mike said, "Please, for God's sake, tell me what it is, because this whole thing just seems insane. Everybody's lying." He says, "What is it?" And Senator Smathers says, if it looks like something, that ain't it. Whatever they say it is, it ain't that." And that was the universal truth of Washington, and that is the nature of politics. So there's all this subtle stuff going on, and people are.
But the same thing could be said about God. People who call themselves atheists, they could say the same thing. Well, that's what you say it is, but not for me. There's an argument to be made that it's not just about politics. When somebody has faith and trusts something, whether it's the political system or faith in a higher consciousness that is at work here in the universe, which is what we call the divine, the sacred, or some people call God. Once you have established a relationship with a world like that, then you have a stake in it. You have a faith in it.
Well,
right? And up to that point, people could contest it and say, "That's not true for me." And it's all just like your point of view. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a pack of lies.
Well, just to finish this thought, and I'll be done with it. and that is that the politic. We all have, I believe, a responsibility to try to grasp at what we think is the important issues, and then vote that way and have an opinion that way. So it's important to have a stance, in my opinion.
Okay, so that's enough said about politics.
No, let me say one last thing about it.
We're talking about respecting other people's opinions.
We're all subject to what we're told, and so whatever it is that comes at us, it goes in. Whether we think it goes in or not, it goes in. So it's affecting us. So the whole thing about the politic is we have to kind of wade through the morass and try to find what the universal truth is or not.
Right.
And which brings us to your idea of, if I'm sitting in a room with someone and somehow the political subject comes up, which happens.
We can't get away from this subject, can we?
No, that I do better, and we all will do better if I listen to what the other guy has to say, even though I may even violently disagree.
Yeah.
I need to keep my mouth shut and listen to what he has to say, he or she. And then when they're done expressing themselves, number one, they're going to be a lot more open to listen to me because I respected them and didn't jump in and cram my stuff down their throat.
Exactly.
That's the first thing.
Yes.
So
to
first
listen.
thing, we're going to have a
Listen.
dialogue, a real dialogue. And then
Listen with
I
your
should
heart.
cogently express my opinion in as intelligent and as rational way that I can, so that I can get across my point of view without a bunch of epithets and swearing and anger, which is worthless.
Right.
And then maybe the two of us can agree, which I believe really that most of the things, pretty much everybody's on the same page on most of the things, like Kennedy's idea that everybody wants the children to be healthy.
Baby, we got to change the subject from politics. I'm sorry.
No, but you brought up this important thing about
Why can't we
have
talk
to
about
listen
something
to
else?
each other.
Like why? Fashion,
like about
fashion,
God. No, let's
or
talk about
nutrition.
God.
Okay, or God. Like
Yes,
we
you
got to
talk
get away
about
from
God. Like,
well,
let's have
not religion, but higher concepts.
Well, how do you feel about your
I just feel
spiritual
very
life?
strongly we should not talk about politics or religion. This is the ZLORD podcast. We've always had that as a guideline. So now we've said we're going to drop the political thing, and let's drop it, okay? And let's move into another area. So, like, for instance, as a woman, okay, I see a lot of women who have a lot of makeup on, who do a lot of stuff with their hair, who do manicures, who do a lot of shopping. And I'm not that kind of a woman. And so just to give you a for instance, I see other variations of womanhood, and I just say to myself, oh, there's another variation of womanhood. I don't necessarily respect it, but I respect each person's choice. So would I ever want to be that kind of a woman? No. Do I respect any woman who has an investment in that? Yes, because that is their truth. That is their guideline. That is their standard for living. And so myself, I don't wear any makeup. I don't put any color in my hair anymore, although I've been thinking about going blue or purple. But, it's you can take it with any subject, like how we do our food. Are we a preparer? Do we go out and get good ingredients and then chop, chop, chop and put it together? Or do we just run to the quickest takeout place and try to get a good meal as healthy as we can? But there's so many different ways that we can approach all aspects of life. Whether we grow plants, whether we have minimalism in our home, or are we into just buying more stuff? Are we into having the latest and greatest update of whatever, whether it's a car or a smoothie maker? You know what I mean? We could take this conversation into a different arena. And so
go ahead.
go ahead.
I don't have anything.
See?
I'm agreeing that I don't know how.
I'm saying see because you
I don't know how.
I'm challenging you. I'm saying bring the
What
opinion
is
thing
what is it
into a
that you're
different
talking
arena
about?
besides the upcoming election. We're talking about respecting other people's opinions, whether it's, hey, you've got a really old car there. I see you're driving like, a 30-year-old car. Is it, is there a reason for that? Or I see your daughter has got a lot of boyfriends, is she ever gonna settle down? And, people have, I'm talking about, okay, I'll just talk to myself here. I'm talking about seeing this inclusiveness of our human family in our myriad ways of being different as being one blended family of humankind, and to love and respect each other, even though some people's differences to them seem deadly, like they would go to war for it, or they would prefer to be angry about it. That's their prerogative. But when I meet somebody like that who hasn't yet grasp the fact that everybody can have a different opinion, then I just try to get away from that person as fast as I can, and not engage, because that's going to lower my consciousness. It's going to lower the vibration that I nurture, that I have worked hard to attain.
So well, what if they're just expressing their opinion and you're just...
Oh, that's okay. But if they're getting into anger, or if they're getting into being aggressive and saying that,
Angry about their car, whether they've got a 30-year-old car?
No, I'm just not. I'm talking about the more strong discussions about religion or politics.
Well, we're not talking about those. We're talking about something else, which is the 30-year-old car. So if you meet a guy who's got a 30-year-old car, and you're not particularly interested in cars. Suppose you couldn't care less about cars. I'd be in that arena. I couldn't care less about cars. And when I never go to an old car show because I have no interest. However, I have talked to people that are interested, and if I just listen, I've always learned something interesting. So I think just about everybody has got something interesting to say about stuff that especially if they know about it.
Well, the antique car thing, it's amazing. There's tribes of people. There's, just circles of people surrounding every single facet of life, and they're tribes, and they hang out and they do things together, and they uplift each other because they have the same enjoyment. Like the antique car tribe, there are people who drive, we've met them, our friend Marty and her husband. They had antique cars. I don't know if they still do, but they would go on these long journeys with other antique car aficionados, and that was fun. It's not our thing, okay?
It's not our thing, but we're up here in Maine, and we've got a barn full of old sleighs and old stuff that's before they even had cars. And it's the same thing. So if somebody was to come here that knew about sleighs, boy, that would be a very interesting discussion.
Well, that's an interesting thing. Like, okay, hanging on to things. Whether it's a concept, like, okay, it's got to be this way or that way, as far as a person voting, or a concept of we can't let go of Uncle Harry's writings from 1880 because they might be important, and so we are dealing with a lot of this hanging on stuff because we're here in this environment. We're in an old farmhouse that's just chock full of boxes and drawers full of mementos, and nobody wants to throw away an iron. Nobody wants to throw away an egg beater. Nobody wants to throw away.
We got about 7 or 8 egg beaters, and some of them are pretty interesting because some of them are 150 or 200 years old. They still work. So it is interesting to see them, I will say. But God dang it, we got 7 or 8 of them. I don't. Anyway, whatever. We should just turn it into a museum.
It is a museum, but like that. Take that concept. Okay, we've been fishing for something that we can talk about without getting our feathers ruffled here. So like materialism, like people who insist on just holding on, not maybe to the extent of hoarding. That's in the extreme, or the lesser concept of that is to always have to have the latest and the greatest, and and the most fashionable, and the materialistic world. So here we are in a place that's historically very beautiful, has many rare things, like even the wallpaper in every room is just divinely inspired and fashionably painted by hand in France. Okay, but there's a lot of crap here too. So how does one sort through what is meaningful and what is crap? See, if it was up to us, we would be taking a lot of this to the dump. But we're in a family of many, and we can't take that prerogative. We can't make that decision. We have to honor everybody's way of saying, yes, I need Uncle Harry's, all his notes from 1880. I need all those egg beaters in order for me to feel connected to my past. So that's another way of looking at this, right?
Sure.
We have to honor other people's needs. And whether or not we can justify it or not doesn't matter. But when you're in a situation, whether it's civilization in general, going for a presidential election, or an old house that's jointly owned by, at least 3 generations, maybe 4 now, with new babies popping up, but everybody's got a stake in this house. So we can't just unilaterally say, oh yeah, we're going to throw out these old papers, because there's somebody here who has a connection with them, either emotionally or whatever. Maybe they think it's a financial connection too. So if you just use a house as a metaphor for society, we're all in this house together, right? And this house has many rooms, and each room is different, and it's occupied by many different people. Are you with me, Carter?
I'm with you.
And it's the same thing as we're going through with this house. We have to honor and respect everybody's opinion and everybody's way of doing it. And the amazing thing about it is our family is remarkably harmonious. We have very few differences of opinions that get to be much more than just like a discussion.
Differences of opinion. We got some real strong differences of opinion, but somehow we've escaped having them turn into any kind of animosity at all. It never goes even close to that. Well, once in a while it does go close, but it doesn't get expressed verbally very much, not to the point where anybody's having any kind of argument. We just make allowance for the other guy's difference, and there's a lot of big differences in the way we look at things. We live in different parts of the country, we're different ages, we're male, we're female, we're hoarders, we're not hoarders, we're athletes, we're intellectuals.
Some of us are minimalists.
We got all kind of different, and so far we've been pretty lucky with not having it come to a boiling point. I know my old man said years ago when because this thing, the trust that runs this thing, is coming to a close next year, and we're reorganizing it legally so that it can continue. But he said to me, the best thing to do after my group dies, which is him and his
your dad's
brothers,
generation, is
just to sell it, because there's going to be so many people. You'll never get anybody to be able to agree with anything, and you're just going to have a squabble. You don't want to have it be a source of a squabble within the family. That's not good. So the best thing to do is just get rid of it and be done with it. But when the time came, nobody wants to get rid of it, because we have fun. People don't come much, but they come a little.
But the house, I'm using it as a metaphor for our society. The house is a great metaphor for humankind. And, not just the fact that it has many different layers, many different rooms, many different, boxes of mementos, and many different personalities and races and genders. I don't believe that we ever should sell it. We should just learn to be harmonious and to accept each other's opinions.
Well, that's what we're doing, and it's working out.
And the way we do that, like, for instance, Carter and I have been clearing out an old storage room that hasn't been touched in 30 years. So Carter wanted to throw out a few things that he said, these don't mean anything. And I said, but you know what? I know they will mean something to this one particular person in the family, just one, but I know that she will miss it and she's going to look for it. And when she comes, we have to honor even the fact that she is 1/35 of the equation, right? We have to honor the fact that she has needs and she has attachments. We have to honor that. And so, am I boring you, Carter?
No.
He just yawned like a lion in the cage. Okay, so this has been a lively discussion with you, Carter. I see you're not very interested once I said we can't talk about politics.
That's a mistake.
Oh, yeah?
You're highly mistaken. You've imposed that thought on the situation, which isn't true.
Well, you want to wrap up the subject then? How would you like to send out a message to our people who have been listening to us for 5 years now?
I just say that
how do we respect each other's opinion without copying attitudes?
By listening and having an open mind and coming with kindness to begin with, and coming with the expectation that we're gonna be respectful, and we're gonna be kind, and we're gonna learn something, and it's gonna bring us closer to the now. Because anytime we're listening, we're on the now. That's a great. I never really thought of that before, but
Not until this
it's
very
true.
minute.
Well, no, but it's true. If you're listening to some idea that's foreign to you, then you're in the moment.
You have to pay attention.
Yeah.
So your attention, your awareness is sharpened, and you're listening with your heart, not just your mind.
And then it sparks. It will spark. We've all got these minds that are fertile and strong and busy and got a lot of power in them. And so the minute a suggestion comes in of something, then it opens new pathways and new little areas, and we can think about things in a different way, and that makes us bigger and better and stronger and more interesting and more interested. So listening to others, which I am not particularly good at, and I'm learning, is one of the greatest. It's very important. So.
Well, I think you struck on a gold mine there when you said that when you really listen, it is the manifestation of being in the now.
It's like watching a baseball game.
You're not allowing your mind to drift away, or it's like more like
you
being in the baseball game. It's not like watching a baseball game.
It's like being in the game.
It's like being in the game, watching the ball, like watching that ball come towards you, knowing that you can either swing at it or it's too low or too high and you're going to let it pass. But when you're in a conversation, I have to do that all the time to awaken myself to the fact, oh, I'm drifting. And all of a sudden I'm like out there in la la land, and I don't chastise myself about it. I say, okay, bring it back, bring my attention back. What is that other person saying? And it's always a work in progress. We always have to remind ourselves to be kind, compassionate, and accepting.
And I can always know that I'm not doing it right when I'm barely hearing what the other guy is saying, but I'm preparing my next comment.
Or you're sitting there next to somebody and you're yawning, like you were doing.
Well, no, that's not. I'm free to yawn. It's not on me. That's the way you misinterpret it.
In the middle of a conversation, it's kind of a signal that I'm not really interested in what you're talking about.
Not a signal to me.
Well, okay. On that note, we have fun, folks. We have fun in our differences, and we have fun in our similarities. We're going to have fun. We're going camping. We're getting ready.
Camping.
We're getting ready to load up our
little... We're going over into the White Mountains and hike around. We're going to go to, first of all, we're going to go to the top of Mount Washington in the car, which is a brutal... I mean, we wouldn't even be able to climb Mount Washington in this state we're in now. But anyway, we're driving. You can get to the top, and it's the most...
In New Hampshire.
Intense
in the White
weather
in New Hampshire.
Place on the planet. Amazingly, for some weird reason, that particular place is got the
funnels of wind or something.
Well, it's just a very, very, and then Appalachian Trail goes through there, and then they go across the top of the tips of the Presidential Range, and I think that the first mountain next to Mount Washington is Mount Jefferson. I think that's it, and I think it's 1.5 miles, and we've just about determined with our knees, the way we're hobbling around, 3 miles, 4 miles is about our max on a. So far, we're hoping to be at 6 by the
Carter's
time we
recovering
leave.
from knee surgery, and I'm probably getting ready for one. Oh,
But if we
God.
can make it to Mount Jefferson and back, that'll be pretty good. In a 3 mile, it's pretty rocky. It's above the tree line there, I think. And so it may be, we may not make it. But anyway, we'll report back to that next week.
So today's the day of preparation. We go through our supplies and see what we have, what we need, and I'll do some cooking so that we don't have to do too much time around the camp stove. And also you have one more problem called bears. We don't want to make a mess with food because that attracts the wild bears, and that's about the only wild animal we have to worry about here in the East. We don't
This
have to worry
particular
about
area
like
where we're
coyotes or
going
anything.
is bear territory.
It's bear territory.
And my dad used to hunt bears in there in the 30s and 40s.
And it means a lot to you because your dad spent so much time
He
there.
spent a lot of time in this particular section just west of Freiburg, right on the eastern side of the White Mountains, along the Wild River and Baldface and that section from Gilead, Maine, south to North Conway.
So what's the feeling like, Carter? This is like ancestral territory for you. You were living in a house where, your ancestors have been living for over 300 years practically, isn't it? Like since the 18th century. And we're going to a camp in the mountains where your dad spent many, many, many days and weeks and months and years doing his favorite thing, which was hunting bears with dogs.
In the 30s, yeah.
In the 30s, when there
we
were
moved
so
to
many
Florida,
bears.
we had 16
They had
bear
bounties.
dogs when we
They
moved
had
to
bounties
Florida.
for bears.
1949.
Yeah,
So they developed these dogs. They had a good.
So what's the feeling? I don't want to get into the dogs right now. What's the feeling that you have being in the same territory as
it's just
your
interesting.
ancestors?
It's interesting because there was a lot of discussion about it over the years, and in the whole ancestors thing. Well, what's the feeling? It's nice.
Walking the hills and trails, and just sensing that your dad, as a young man, was there. And most of the time we're in other places of the world. We're not here in this particular area of the world where your dad was.
Well, the good thing
a
about
hunter.
this section is there's not that many people around. There's more than there used to be in this area where we are here near Portland. But over there, it's still just about empty. I mean, even the campgrounds are empty. There's just nobody around. So it's pretty great. On the other side, over by Mount Washington, it's jammed because everybody's going there. But on the eastern side, it's just nobody there for some reason. Even the road, part of the road closes in the winter. So it's primitive over there. It's a few old farmhouses, but that's it. So it's pretty good. And there's a lot of neat trails, and some of them are hard and some of them aren't.
I guess I'm looking for something different. Maybe I'm projecting onto you, but as we spent time, like a week ago, we were camping in the same area. I kept getting this feeling from you that you were like sensing that these were the woods where your dad, Bill Lord, had spent time. Not just, this is a beautiful woods, but isn't there an ancestral thing that ignited in you? Like you got real excited
that's different.
when you ran into the family of some
Florida
hunter that used to be with your dad, and you got real excited.
Well, we lucked into these people who I've been hearing about my whole life, and I was vague about where they lived, and we stopped to buy some maple syrup, and these people had bought the house from them, so that was a serendipitous. But the feeling of being there,
of being connected,
the woods
being connected
are
to the
different
land,
than Florida.
Than just saying, this is a pretty landscape. This is a marvelous view. I mean, do you feel, don't you, isn't there a more visceral connection, or am I just
it feels like home. The Maine woods, it feels like coming home for me, even though I wasn't raised here. But there's something real nice about the conifers and just the woods in general.
You were 3 when you left. So maybe
Yeah, but
there's
we came back a lot.
maybe
We're
there's this
coming back.
memory inside of you. When you're 3 years old, you're still out there seeing the conifers and seeing the land. And, they say everything that you are is already formed by the time you're 4 years old in some child behavior studies. Anyway, that's where we're going, folks. And so thanks for listening. And if you have any comments, we're always glad to hear from you. And may you have a blessed and fruitful,
There it is.
and joyous week or two until we talk to you next time.
All right.
Om Namah Shivaya.